Do you like what you're hearing? Do you want to hear more? You can. Thanks to the excellent host blogtalkradio.com. You can hear this episode and others later at blogtalkradio.com, Bram Sarkowski. That's blogtalkradio.com/BRAMSARKOWSKI. Check us out. Click the link and get the conversation going. Thanks for listening. You're listening to the Social Spitball Show on blogtalkradio.com with your host, Bram Sarkowski, and featuring co-host Barbara D. Now, let's rejoin the conversation. All right, I am back, and Barbara D. is with me, and like I mentioned before the break, we have a candidate for Congress in the 13th Congressional District, Virginia Conlon, I believe, is on the line. Ms. Conlon?
Yes, I'm here.
All right. Welcome to the show. It's an honor to have you on. How are you doing this evening?
Well, it's been a busy day today, Bram and Barbara. Thank you so much for having me today. I've been out on the campaign trail all morning. I know people think this is really easy and glamorous running for office, but it certainly isn't. It's a lot of hard work. Oh, yes, definitely. I think Barbara and I know a little bit about getting out there and knocking on doors, and so we know what you're going through. Yep. And so it is hard work, but tell us a little bit about the district. What sort of demographics are you looking at? How many counties? What's the mileage you're covering as you get out there? I'm afraid to tell my husband how much mileage I'm putting on my car. The district looks like a Rorschach test. When it was gerrymandered back in 2010, they took a district that had been a really solid Democratic district and laid out really nicely, and they've turned it into 8 counties. There's no one county that has the whole district in it. We cover here in North Carolina Wake, Wayne, Franklin, Wilson, Granville, Vance, Edgecombe, Durham. Even with that being said, this seat was only lost by 56,000 votes in 2012. So it is really a doable seat to take back from the Republicans. My opponent, George Holding, is a very, very wealthy man, and it comes from a very, very wealthy family. And you've probably seen him on television. He made YouTube because he was asleep in the speaker's chair during the shutdown of the government.
Right.
So, yeah, so he made headlines, and he's treated the job that way pretty much all the way along. So I think that it is doable. I think as I was listening to your previous guest, I think if we can get people out to vote, which people just don't think their vote either counts or is needed, and they're so wrong about that. 56,000 people in 8 counties is really not that many people.
Yeah, that's true. It's just a matter of, I guess, targeting. Is that the strategy, or how do you go about getting those voters out?
Yeah, I am targeting. We have a lot of independents. In fact, independents are growing in North Carolina, and if you take both the Democrats and the independents that lean Democratic, we actually have more votes than the Republicans. So it is targeting. It's also convincing them that it matters, and that's a lot of one-on-one, face-to-face. This really does matter. It does make a difference in your life. Yeah.
Well, speaking of which, as I mentioned how you're putting mileage, hopefully your husband won't get upset about the mileage on your car, but as you make your way around, it is important to put that mileage on your car. As you make your way around, what issues are concerning the potential constituents, the voters, and what issues concern you most, and how do they match up?
Well, I've driven this campaign by first getting out and meeting people. I live in my own little world like the rest of us, but I really took a long, hard time before I decided to do this, and probably met with over 100 people, small businesses, Fair Tax Act people. I went everywhere, and I wanted to hear what was going on. And overwhelmingly what I'm hearing, especially in Wake, Northern Wake, Wayne, Franklin, the counties that are more easterly, is jobs. there are no jobs. There are no jobs for the people in their 20s. There are no jobs for people in their 50s. The economy turnaround hasn't really affected them yet. And, of course, that means a whole variety of issues, food, George Holding voted against long-term unemployment benefits being extended. Medicaid was not extended in this state. So there's food, health care. It affects everything. So without good living wage jobs, we just can't move forward in this state.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's okay. And the other issue I've heard is people are sick and tired of Congress fighting. They don't want to hear bad things about each other. They want you to work. They don't want you poking your finger and saying, well, he did this and he did that. That doesn't matter anymore. What we need to do is work. We need to get together and we need to work on fixing these issues.
Okay. One issue that is kind of a state issue is the fact that teachers have been leaving, and I'm here in North Carolina with you. Mm-hmm. Teachers have been leaving the state because of what the General Assembly has done on the state level. As a member of Congress, there is a bit of influence you can have. Congress determines monies that come down to the state. They determine other things. Mm-hmm. What can you do as a member of what can you advocate for in Congress to help the public education here in North Carolina?
Well, you're right. Education is a state issue, and I am appalled at what's happened with the teachers here and the fact that they're not going to probably get a raise this year because of whatever reason our governor has decided. But I think one of the bigger issues is that we've been under this No Child Left Behind mandate. It's a testing system. It's a punishing system for teachers whose children don't reach certain levels in testing. It's not good for kids. It takes all creativity out of the classroom. Which is the worst thing that we can do these days, because creativity is really what's going to get more jobs. It takes the teacher's creativity out of the classroom, and all we're looking to is to go to the test, and what does the test say about the kids? Well, if a teacher has a group of kids, and I have lots of teacher friends, if you have a teacher that is a really well-known teacher and a really good teacher, you want your kid in her class. Well, that's great, but that teacher might also get all of the kids that are struggling in school. So her test scores aren't going to look as good as somebody else's test scores. So testing our kids and our teachers really isn't the answer. So we need to make sure that No Child Left Behind doesn't get reauthorized. And the other thing is, I really want to make sure, as you know, I used to work for the Food Bank of Central and Eastern North Carolina. I've seen the face of Republican leadership in this state, and it's a face of a child that hasn't eaten in 3 days.
Right.
We have to feed our children. We have to make sure that when they get to school, they have a good, nutritious lunch, regardless of their background, so that they can then use that to make sure that they get what they need out of school. And in so many cases, kids just aren't getting good, nutritious lunches at school. And we're looking at, again, George Holding is looking to cut it again. And, of course, we heard what Paul Ryan said. So we really aren't taking care of our children like we should be. We all talk about, oh, we love our kids, and then we turn around and say, oh, well, you really don't need to eat, or, oh, well, you don't need to have the best schools. I disagree. We have to make sure that there's not unfunded mandates. If we push things down from the federal government, we have to also make sure it is funded.
And you actually mentioned something that sort of is parallel to what Mr. Reed was talking about with taking care of our veterans. Obviously, when they come home, they need to be taken care of, just like our children need to be taken care of when they go to school. And then speaking of military, Barbara had a question about that for you.
Hi, Barbara.
Yeah.
How are you?
Hi, I'm doing good. I can't believe I didn't see you on Saturday.
I'm sorry I missed you.
Yes, but I did get to meet your daughter, and she's delightful.
Super.
Yeah.
Actually, she's not my daughter. Everybody thinks she is. She's a young lady that decided to volunteer for my campaign. She's 24 years old. We're talking about Carissa Morrison.
Right.
And she's a young lady that just decided that she liked what I had to say and liked what I was trying to do. And she works 3 jobs. And
wow.
she has decided, she's amazing. She's decided that she's going to sign on. But you give me a very high compliment that she's my daughter.
Yeah. Well, she did an excellent job for you as your stand-in. North Carolina is one of the strong military states. We've got the large base down there at Camp Lejeune, right by the coast in Jacksonville, and which is not in our district, and neither one are, but you would still be looking out for our state. How would you stand up for our veterans and their families, considering all the things that have been going on, cutting their benefits here and there, their pay for veterans? What would you do?
Well, we haven't funded the Veterans Administration to take care of the benefit administration the way we should. Our veterans coming back should get the excellent services that they have earned and they deserve. We need to put, and if that means putting more money into the Veterans Administration so we take care of this backlog, I think that needs to be done. My grandmother used to say an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And we certainly learned when our Vietnam veterans came back that we really didn't take care of them the way we should have. Now we have all of these veterans coming back from these 2 wars that are finally winding down, and we need to take care of them in a way that they have not only done their job and done their job well, but we need to make sure that they have the mental health with the PTSD, that they have the mental health access that they need. We need to also make sure that if they reach out, that they're comfortable reaching out. And sometimes we might need to look at putting some satellite campuses in places where veterans have retired so that they have access. I know we have the giant VA hospital here in Durham, and they do a fabulous job. But that might not be enough, and we might have to look at making sure that they're taken care of. They've done their job. We need to do ours. And George Holding just really doesn't pay attention to the Veterans Administration or their needs.
No, I think that you're absolutely right, considering that he does have Goldsboro, Seymour Johnson. I kind of just stopped to think of the name of it. And that's been there a long time. My dad served there when it was Seymour Field back in the 40s during World War II. So it's been there a long time. And there's a lot of people that do retire, and so it does affect them. Let's see. What have people been saying about the Affordable Care Act since the Republicans have been trying to repeal it for, 50 times now?
What a waste of energy when there's so many other things that they can be taken care of.
Absolutely.
We look at this, there's 2 different issues with the Affordable Care Act. Firstly, it's really obvious to everyone, that they didn't have a good project manager on the website. Now, websites, even Google gets websites messed up. So websites are not the law. And a website can be fixed, and it can be made better, and it can be done right. And I know that they're working on trying to fix it. But that's a website. That's not the law. The law is helping to take care of millions of people that didn't have health insurance. I know I have a personal story of a friend that owns a small business. She was able to cut her health insurance from $1,800 a month down to $1,000 a month. And not only that, she was able to be covered for the first time because she had a pre-existing condition. So her kids are getting wellness. Yeah, her kids are getting wellness benefits. She's cut the cost. She's probably going to add another employee to her small business because she's saving on her health insurance. So we're not talking about the good stories that's coming out of there. Does that mean that this law is perfect? No, it doesn't. We need to work on it. But we worked on all the laws once they've been passed, including President Bush's law for prescription medication. So we need to stop fighting the old battles and work with what we have and fix what's there, rather than trying to repeal the law.
I agree with you completely, and as someone who didn't have insurance for a period of time and couldn't get any because I have a pre-existing condition, unfortunately, well, I guess fortunately for me, I aged into Medicaid care, so otherwise I would have applied for the Affordable Care Act and been happy to have had it, because I had a heart attack years ago, and, I looked around and I couldn't afford what they wanted. Switching over to the Ukraine, Russia, and Crimea, there's a whole lot going on in the international scene, and as our Congresswoman, you would be making decisions on whether we might go into another Cold War or possibly even a full-fledged war. How would you react as a member of Congress to the situation that's going on now?
Well, I wouldn't be calling Mr. Putin names.
Right.
That's kind of childish. What he has done and taking over the Crimea from the Ukraine is appalling. We need to have a negotiated resolution, and it needs not to be just us. It needs to be the Europeans who are involved in that area. But I really don't see at this time that there's any place that we need to send troops, and we don't need to escalate it to where we're back to another Cold War. I'm glad to hear that President Obama and Mr. Putin are talking. There's a way to work this out, and maybe not to everyone's satisfaction, but there's a way to work this out.
So basically negotiations and not going into war.
Yeah, that would be my preference. I'm a little sick of war. I don't know about the rest of you guys.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm a little sick, and I'm tired of seeing our kids put up first to do stuff.
Exactly. I feel the same way. And it seems like so many, because of the job situation, so many will go into the service because there are no jobs. I know a lady right here in my town that she was married with 3 kids, and her husband couldn't find work, so she went into the military. I mean, and has actually stayed in, so it's been a better life for her.
Yeah, but you shouldn't have to make that choice. You should have to serve because you want to, not because it's an economic choice.
Right.
And until we start dealing with the fundamentals of what job creation looks like in this country and in this state, somebody's going to have to make those kind of choices, and they shouldn't have to unless they really want to.
Well, I had a question that was related to the Affordable Care Act, and the reason I wanted to ask this is because it's personal to me, and this is another sort of state issue kind of related question, but it does tie in with Congress and what Congress did. I mean, we paid our taxes. The Affordable Care Act was funded through tax dollars from all the states, and obviously North Carolina taxpayers paid their part, but our Governor McCrory, as you well know, and the legislature, they refused the money for expansion of Medicaid, which put 500,000 North Carolinians, myself included, in basically a gap where they last year they made too much to qualify for Medicaid and too little to qualify for a subsidy, which doesn't make sense to a lot of us. But as a member of Congress, how would you react to them doing that, and what could you do to reverse that bold mistake made by them?
Well, unfortunately, this was decided by the Supreme Court. So this is that the states could decide what they wanted to do. So we don't have a lot of recourse legally to come back and say we need to fix this. So it is a state's right. So I'm going to go and change the topic on you a little bit. So what would have happened if instead of President Bush, we had a Democratic president there and we didn't end up with a Roberts course? We would have had a totally different outcome in what that was decided. We would have had a totally different outcome in the recent Supreme Court decision about money in politics. So I'm going to harp a little bit about what I said before, which is if people don't get out to vote, if people do not get out to vote, if we have a Senate that goes Republican, so we'll then have two branches of the government Republican, there's only so many things that President Obama can veto. We absolutely have to get out and exercise our right to vote, because if we want, as the previous guest was saying, if we want a Democratic Congress and a Democratic Senate, we have to have Democratic people that are in office. And until we do that, we can't correct some of these things. And the Medicaid is a good issue of that. We can't correct that. It's already been adjudicated, and we can't fix that. So at this time, but if we get a Democratic Congress and a Democratic Senate, we can then turn these around.
Now, moving on to a couple of hot topics. Socially speaking, let me just put it that way.
Okay.
Socially speaking, hot topics. So first up, this year the Super Bowl had Denver Broncos and the Seattle Seahawks representing two states that had just recently passed laws that legalize marijuana. Where do you stand on the legalization of marijuana? Would you go as far to advocate for federal legalization, or would you advocate for a more moderate position like decriminalization of marijuana offenses?
Well, I think that marijuana is one of the state issues. I think you should still be allowed to decide in a state what you want to do. I've never smoked marijuana. In fact, I've never smoked, period. So I don't know what the attraction is. I'm sorry, I'm being an old fuddy-duddy there. I do believe, though, that the penalties are way too harsh, and decriminalizing that would probably be the best thing to do, especially with our federal laws, and usually the states follow suit by and large with that part of it. So I really think that we need to allow each state to kind of decide what they want to do with the marijuana, but I also think that we don't need to put people in prison. We don't need to build any more prisons because they get caught smoking a joint. I know that might not be the best answer for a lot of the younger people, but I'm much more of it's not my business what you do in your home. And if you decide to smoke marijuana in your house, I don't need to know about it, and I don't need to be involved with it, and it doesn't need to be a criminalization.
Well, I frankly speaking, I've got some young libertarian friends who would love the answer you just gave, so I wouldn't beat yourself up on that one. So, and I believe Barbara's got the other hot topic for us, which we sort of touched on with the last guest a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Barbara?
Virginia. We're coming up on actually a 2-year anniversary of the passage of Amendment 1.
Mm-hmm.
They popped that in on the May primary of 2012. And it defines the only legal partnership as a marriage between one man and one woman. This has created a lot of problems here in North Carolina for a lot of people with financial, health care, and issues that for heterosexual couples, they don't seem to have that problem. Where do you stand on marriage equality, and should marriage equality be legalized nationwide?
Well, as someone who's been married to a fabulous husband for 38 years,
wow.
The argument, yeah, I know. It's amazing he's put up with me that long. And the argument that we often hear is that it will destroy traditional marriage. I don't think that's a valid argument. It's not going to affect my marriage. It's not going to affect my friends that are married. You know, you love who you love, and there's nothing you can do about who you love. I see gay families and that are loving, great, fabulous parents. I really believe that Pope Francis, again, it's not my place to judge. Marriage is one of those things that, again, is state control. I would like to see a push across the country that we get rid of, first, the law here in North Carolina, and secondly, that we push it across. And I think the young people are really leading the way in this one. I sat down with the LGBT community here when I first started to think about running, and it's really heartened to see them and the energy that they're putting into this and the acceptance, because it's their families. They're just like you and me. They're like everybody else, and it needs to go in this state, and it really needs to be. It's. I think in 10 years, or I think in 5 years, probably, we're not even going to have a problem with this.
Okay, good answer. George Holding, our
God.
current, our current incumbent. He has a lot of money, and he can call upon his family's money from First Citizens down there, which started in Smithfield. If nominated by your party, how do you plan to compete with and defeat Holding? What are your plans, Virginia?
Well, I've already put a lot of them in place. I'm organizing. So if you're listening to this show, I'd really like you to sign up to volunteer for my campaign. I'm out knocking on doors. I'm meeting groups. I'm going everywhere and say, vote, 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 which I've said here many times. So we've done this before. Patty Murray did this out in her state when she first ran, which she was called the tennis shoe mom. Is to get out and look people in the eye and say, vote for me, and take your friends and have them come vote for me too. I think money can be defeated if we get enough organizational skills behind it, and I'm pretty good at getting people organized. Okay, good.
You're in a three-way primary with two other very active and dedicated good Democrats. What makes you stand out from them that you would offer to potential voters? What is it that's going to get you the nomination?
I have two fabulous candidates that I'm running against, but they don't have what I have, which is I'm an everyday person. I'm an average, everyday person, and I can beat George Holding. When you stand the two of us up, who does George Holding take care of? The rich and powerful. Who have I all my life taken care of? I've volunteered at Habitat for Humanity. I've built houses. I've been on Meals on Wheels. I've been a disaster volunteer for the American Red Cross. I have always, always, always looked out for my community. So when you stand the two of us up, you have a very, very wealthy man who really hasn't done very much. And then you have someone who's really been active in her community, regardless of where she lives, to make sure that her community was taken care of. And I think when the voters see that stark difference, they're going to say she can beat George Holding.
Very good, very good. Is Bram there? Yeah, are you there?
I'm here. Here. I'm listening.
All righty.
It's a strong answer. Well, I just wanted to just ask you a little bit more about the issues that you encountered. You touched on them a little bit at the top of the conversation. Do you have any anecdotes from the field as you encounter folks? I mean, you said you're an everyday person. You're knocking on doors of everyday people in the district. How are they reacting to you? What is the feedback?
Actually, been pretty positive.
Okay.
I've been really kind of surprised that overall most people want to talk to you. They're really curious why an average person is running for Congress. You know, I don't know. I'm going to throw a prop out to a writer. His name's Nicholas Carnes, and he's written a book called White Collar Congress. And it was one of the things I read before I decided to get into this race. And only 2% of Congress are blue-collar workers. And I consider myself a blue-collar worker. I'm a meeting and event planner by trade. My father was a carpenter. And I feel that I relate better to that kind of person. So I've been really heartened by the fact that people go, well, what are you going to do? How are you going to change things? And it's been a really uplifting experience. Now, have I come across a couple Tea Party people? Yeah, I have. And most of them actually are kind of nice if you start talking to them. We don't agree, but they're actually kind of nice people, and that's part of the problem is we've stopped talking about politics in this country, and we're letting it be driven by polarization, and a lot of these people are your neighbors.
I wanted to extend the same invitation to you to tell folks how they can contact you, to get out the vote for you, to tweet for you, to donate, all those things to help you with your campaign in this primary. And the primary is May 6th, and as Ms. Conlon said, and as Mr. Reed said earlier, get out and vote, people. Wherever you are, find out when your races are and get out and vote. But with that being said, Ms. Conlon, if you'll tell folks how they can help you out.
Well, early voting starts April 24th here in North Carolina. If you're going to go to the early voting, I think, get out there. There's plenty of opportunities. They've cut down the number of days that you can do early voting, but not the number of hours. And I'd really appreciate your support in this race. I am a volunteer-driven campaign. I have a kitchen cabinet of these wonderful women who range in age from Carissa, who was 24, to a lady that's 78, who have really advised me and helped me. And it's a we in this campaign and not a me. I always used to laugh at politicians, but it takes a we. And I need more volunteers. So you can reach me at Conlon, and that's the number 4, conlon4nc.com. I'm on Facebook, and that's Conlon4nc. That's the number 4. And I'm on Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter at Conlon4nc. As I say on the campaign trail, if you like me on Facebook and follow me on Twitter, it's not a long-term relationship. If you care to make a donation, I even got you laughing, don't I, Bram? If you care to make a donation, you can do that through my website, and I would appreciate that. But I really would prefer to hear from you. I have coffee often with a lot of my constituents, my future constituents. So if you want to have a cup of coffee, drop me an email, and I'll see where I can work you in on my schedule. I think most of the people that have decided to have coffee with me vote for me, but that's an awful hard way to get voters. But I like it, and it's one of the best parts of the campaign is actually meeting everyone. And thank you for letting me have this forum tonight. You guys are doing a great service by reaching out and in a different way to try to reach people so that they can hear from the candidates themselves. Thank you very, very much.
And thank you. It was an honor to have you on, and we have about 30 minutes.